Moments ago, we were up there, and then we shit our pants. We ended up
we're down here.
Over here.
That was so scary.
Oh, oh, Regal, he's good.
Who's going to get it? Jeremy! Who is that on the chin?
Is that?
So on the final day of the Southern Utah Paramotor Fly-In, we had a pretty scary weather event that resulted in about 20 pilots landing out away from the LZ. One pilot, my good friend Josh McGee, throwing his reserve, and it also caused multiple other collapses that luckily didn't result in any reserve tosses. At the end of the day, there were 0 injuries, which is a huge blessing. But I want to evaluate this flight and kind of narrate after the fact, step by step, what happened. Now, this flight was going to be just a fun flight. I had my music playing. I wasn't planning on posting it on YouTube, but I always roll my GoPro just in case something interesting happens. And here we are. Something interesting did happen. I also put this little timer down in the bottom because we're going to skip around in this flight a little bit so you guys can keep a sense of the duration of the flight. I think it was about 24 minutes in total. For this flight, I elected to fly my 14-meter Freeride 2, and I kind of regretted that after the weather conditions changed rapidly because this is a very spicy wing. I had been flying my 16-meter Viper 6, which is an efficient, slightly bigger wing, which helped with the higher density altitude. And yes, that is the correct way to say it, high density altitude. But this flight was supposed to be just fun. So I wanted to have fun on my 14 meter. Right here on takeoff, you can see the flags are blowing pretty good. The weather forecast for this day, it was pretty windy throughout the day, but the forecast was for it to calm down close to sunset. And here you can see we're pretty close to sunset. I think there were about 30 minutes of daylight before the sun went down remaining. So everyone was kind of on the same page of the winds finally calmed down. Let's go out and have a quick, fun flight. At the beginning of this flight, the conditions were smooth. I took off and immediately started finding my friends and just going full on Hooligan mode. I had been filming most of my flights for YouTube, but this one, like I mentioned, was supposed to be just for fun. So here I find Adam. We do some shenanigans first, just having fun, listening to music, ripping it up. We go into a synchro spiral here, and I don't know what kind of music I was playing. I think it was Rap Caviar on Spotify. Just feeling good, having fun. I don't fly the 14 a whole lot, and every time I get on it, I just want to go fast and have fun, ripping past these cars, doing low slalom turns. I'm holding this baby wide open, just going all out, having the time of my life. If you take a look at the clouds at this point in the flight, when we took off, there is this one cloud kind of directly above the LZ that just looks a little bit shady. And I say shady because I guess it doesn't have very well-defined edges. It almost looks like there's wispy parts of the cloud breaking down underneath it, somewhat like Virga. Now, I noticed this cloud, but it didn't look that alarming at the time, and I will say that there definitely was probably a bit of a group mentality here at the fly-in. Once one guy takes off, it's kind of like everyone just assumes that everyone has checked the weather and it's good. Versus, I think if you were here at this LZ flying alone, you'd probably put a little bit more thought into the weather conditions. That being said, me personally, I didn't see anything wrong with the weather forecast at this point. I knew that that cloud looked a little bit weird, and I was going to keep an eye on it, but I also wasn't planning on going very far away from the LZ. Here I found my buddy Matt, and at this point, Matt had just taken off, but there was something wrong with his wing. I think he had like a cravat or a stick stuck in the lines or something, and he actually decides to land right here, which, in hindsight, he missed out on most of the flight, which was a blessing because that led him to avoid this microburst situation that we're about to experience in about 15-20 minutes into the flight. Now, I think a lot of the pilots after the fact were calling this a microburst. I am no weather expert, but I would say that's probably the best description. A microburst is a very isolated and quick event that happens typically in a thunderstorm cloud where there's a large column of sinking air that drops and it creates this very isolated, strong wind pattern. In this case, I would say it was a more mild microburst because microbursts can cause winds up to like 100 miles an hour. In this case, it wasn't that extreme, but I think microburst is still the right way to describe this. Here I pull up next to my boy Colby. We do a quick wingtip touch, and Colby's on my Viper XC 16 meter and my Scout, which to him is very unfamiliar gear. So that will come into play later on when this microburst actually happens. I'm thinking about Colby on this gear that he's not familiar with. At this point, I see my buddy Adam. I swoop down. I do a sick barrel roll on the 14 meter free ride. I'm feeling good. I'm having a lot of fun. To fast forward a little bit, I see my boy Josh, and I got to get a wingtip touch with him. And in this frame, you can actually see a little bit of a rainbow. And I did realize the rainbow at this point, which obviously means there's some type of rain falling from this cloud. In hindsight, the conservative and the better decision would have been to stay right by the LZ, or even more conservative would be just to land. But obviously at this point, no one's thinking that the conditions are that bad. For me in this moment, I was just observing all the things that were happening, the slight virga causing the rainbow, and I was thinking, I got to keep an eye on that. It kind of triggers something in me to say that conditions might change at some point during this flight, but for now, they're still good, so let's carry on. Jumping ahead a little bit more, I pull up next to Adam again, and I believe at this point, I actually signaled to him, pointing at the cliff, saying, let's go fly over there. And at this point during the flight, I had made a decision that I had some fun around the LZ, doing wingtip touches with my friends, but I had determined that the winds felt good, the air felt stable, and I was going to make the flight over to the cliffs here. The cliffs aren't that far away, so I still felt safe knowing that if something changed, I could get back to the LZ pretty quickly, which, foreshadowing, that's exactly what happened. So now, about 11 minutes into the flight, I'm just arriving at the cliffs. There are about 3 or 4 pilots already flying up above the cliffs, which gave me at least an indication that the air was stable enough for them to be up here. So I pull up to the cliffs. You can see the flag on the top. It's blowing a little bit. It's not a crazy strong wind, and this is about 2,000 feet probably above the ground level here. So typically higher winds, but the flag looked pretty good to me. Adam is right behind me, and I go immediately in to swoop the cliffs. I'm staying on the upwind side here, which is what you got to do when the winds are strong. And now if you look straight ahead, you can see something that I kind of missed at the time. In the town, straight ahead from me, there's dust blowing. And I think this, in hindsight, was the first indication off in the distance that something was happening. The microburst is like a column of sinking air that was being pushed down and probably hitting the surface and expanding. And it was as if there was a wall of dust coming through that town. Hopefully you can see it right here. The town just looks a little dusty. And throughout the progression of this video, you can see that that dust cloud sweeps across the town towards me. But meanwhile, I'm over here at the top of this big cliff. The winds aren't that bad, obviously, because I'm doing barrel rolls off the side of the cliff. I'm playing my rap music. I'm having a grand old time watching my buddies Adam, and I think that was Josh right behind him, doing the same thing. We're getting ridge lift off of this cliff face, so we kind of boost up and then we dive down again. Here you can see that dust again, and you can see the bottom of the cloud glowing in the sunlight, getting more and more wispy. I did take note of that this cloud was looking more and more ominous as the sunset progressed. Virga is when rain drops out of clouds and doesn't hit the ground. So you see that wispiness that actually formed a rainbow at one point, and that was a good indication that something was happening in hindsight. Now, at the top of this cliff, you can see the flag is pretty much limp. So there's kind of this contradiction in my mind, I guess, was happening, that the clouds didn't look good, but everything felt good. The winds all the way at the top of the cliff were ideal. The air was smooth. Given all that data, I always had that in the back of my mind that the conditions may change, but for right now, they were still good. I was still having fun. I wanted to get some sweet dives on this cliff, and I did exactly that. Right now, super happy that I chose to fly the 14 meter because I'm diving this cliff and doing barrel rolls and having a great time. Almost 15 minutes into the flight here. The sunset is looking gorgeous. The flag is still just barely blowing at the top of this big cliff. I go for another sweet dive down the cliff, but off in the distance, there's definitely Virga coming out of the cloud. There was still a rainbow, and if you were really observant, you could have noticed the dust kind of pushing across the town. I think this was my final barrel roll cliff dive session, and at this point, I was pretty satisfied. I got my adrenaline rush. I had a ton of fun, and given the fact that I knew the clouds were looking a little bit ominous, I was like, I'm going to cut this short, and I think I'm going to start heading back to the LZ. At this point in time, the air is still stable. It still feels not so turbulent. Everything is good. I'm watching my boys, Adam and Josh over there, doing their dives down the cliff. But very shortly after I decided to head back to the LZ is when I can start to feel the conditions change. Right about here, I start to feel that my wing is getting tossed around a bit. And now this is something I've talked about a lot, is that there's different types of turbulence, and one of the indications of bad turbulence is when you notice a quick difference in the type of turbulence or the intensity of turbulence. In this situation, it was smooth air, and then all of a sudden, my wing gets tossed around. It's that sudden change that's a big red flag. Combine that with the fact of this ominous cloud, the Virga, the rainbow, and I started to think, this might be not so good. And a few minutes later, I start to realize the intensity of this situation. Right here, I'm kind of looking back because I noticed that the conditions are getting bad, and I'm hoping that my friends start to follow me to the LZ. I was hoping that they weren't going to just be distracted by the awesomeness of this cliff and maybe not feel the change in the air and get stuck over there. But here, I'm starting to push back. You see all that Virga happening, and turbulence is really hard to see through a GoPro, especially with how good the stabilization is these days. But to describe the turbulence, it got to, I would say for me, a solid 7 out of 10. It was at the point where if you weren't actively piloting, which you could see right there, if you weren't catching surges, you were definitely going to be taking collapses. It was like mandatory, hands-on, active piloting territory. Now, it's not the worst turbulence I've ever flown in, and I kept that in mind the entire time. I've been in worse, and I haven't taken collapses in worse than this. So I was in this position where I knew conditions had changed rapidly. I knew I wanted to get back to the LZ, and I hope my friends were following me. But I still felt somewhat content about the whole situation of making it back to the LZ. I was keeping in mind that I wanted to maintain altitude just in case if I took a collapse that I would have altitude to throw in my reserve. And I was also simultaneously thinking about opportunities to land. If it got really bad, I could land out pretty much anywhere in this desert below me. And in fact, I noticed, I don't think you can see on the GoPro, but I saw 2 pilots make that decision and land out prior to this main road, just down and to my right in the desert area. I was considering the possibility that I might want to land out, but I still felt confident that I could make it back to the LZ because, like I said, I've been in worse than this. It was definitely a bad situation, but it wasn't the worst. This phase of the flight, and actually right here, I think you can see a downed pilot out in the middle of the desert. Throughout this phase of the flight, it felt like it was taking forever. In reality, it was only a few minutes, but I was kind of wanting to get on the ground ASAP, and I was fighting a headwind all the way back to the LZ. So this phase of the flight was just like, come on, I want to get back. I'd like to be on the ground right now. I'm not comfortable with this. And at this point, I'm maintaining my altitude, but pretty soon you'll see me start to drop. I'm starting to get into that zone where I'd be pretty low for a reserve toss, but I fly into what felt like a column of rapidly sinking air. At some point, coming up to this grassy area with the school here, I kind of felt like my wing was sagging behind me, like it wanted to stall out, which is a weird feeling. And I was sinking, and I was holding damn near full power and still sinking with the glider behind me. This was a scarier moment. You start to realize the amount of force that's going on to just push you out of the sky at full power. Here, I looked at this school and I thought about, hey, that's a nice grassy area. There's a road right near it. Someone could come by and scoop me up. I could just land right here. But still, I felt confident that I could make it back to the LZ. And I did. And in hindsight, I think I would have made the same decision because I still felt comfortable flying in this amount of turbulence. But you'll see in just a second when I realized how real this situation was. I passed over the school. I'm in the final stretch. At this point, I knew Josh was behind me, and I knew Adam and Colby were behind him, but I was kind of distracted flying myself. I wanted to check on the boys, and that's right when here I saw a reserve out, and I saw the glider. I was pretty sure it was Josh, and at this moment is when I realized this is really bad. A reserve toss isn't guaranteed that you're going to land safe without any broken bones. And when I looked back and saw Josh, I was terrified. I mean, he could have just hit the ground hard and broke his legs. I didn't know, but I was so close to LZ. I was thinking, let's just get on the ground ASAP. We'll hop in the truck and we'll start to figure this out. I know people had already seen this collapse happen and they were already on their way to help Josh. I bundled up my glider, and at this point you can see that the flag is fully pegged in pretty much the exact opposite direction of what it was when we took off. So I run over. Happily, I see Matt was on the ground. Like I said, it was kind of a blessing. He had an issue with his wing, so he missed a lot of this event.
Was that Josh? I think that was Josh. And I don't see Colby either. I don't know. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. All right, we got to find both of those. I think everything on video, but that was bad.
I think that was Josh.
So I am for sure a bit panicked at this point. I don't know if Josh is injured or not. I don't see Adam and I don't see Colby. Luckily, Matt gets on the phone with Josh and he picks up, and turns out he is okay. We confirmed it was Josh that tossed the reserve, but he was intact and totally fine, which was the biggest relief ever. Knowing that Josh was okay and had help on the way already, we turned our attention to Colby, and we found out that he, after seeing Josh throw his reserve, wisely landed out in the middle of the desert. So we hopped in the truck and went out to rescue Colby.
Moments ago, we were up there, and then we our pants. We ended up
We're down here.
over here.
That was so scary.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have to get the motor through that. This might be the easiest spot though to bring it.
We gotta go down there.
This log right here.
Yeah, we definitely gotta go down there. And then Colby, you
Oh, dude. Are we gonna bring the motor across that? This is the best possible scenario we can get.
no, you guys are
Well-
gonna break your ass.
At very least, this is shallow enough. We can put one guy there, pass it across.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, I'm gonna try to cross this.
Dude.
I can.
It's Ron right there. That's where it's gonna break.
I don't know if it breaks.
You
It
want me to
breaks.
video you?
I'm just gonna jump. I just need one step. I'm glad you're not dead.
Bro, I thought I was gonna be dead. I was like, oh my gosh.
Matt?
I believe in you. Probably,
Yeah, you can jump.
yeah, that works. You got
I don't
that.
have any grip.
You got that.
Parkour! Yeah, Matt.
Oh my god.
Dude,
Bro,
that was.
All right.
I think that's the
This is what we
scariest
do
thing
for our
in
next
life.
parkour. Put the motor on your back, you jump.
Yeah, we just
We just send it.
That got bad.
Oh my god.
That was so scary. Landing
Dude, this
zone.
is actually a solid LZ.
The wide open landing zone. You can take off here if you need.
Did you have feel good music keeping you comfort?
Oh, yeah, bro. We had that. I was ready to go in on, I think it was some Coulter Wall.
I was listening to the feel good vibe music we were playing the whole time.
Yeah, bro. I was just sitting there talking to God, like, hey, I might be about to meet you right here.
Oh my god.
Like, hey, we might actually, this conversation
This is-
might get a lot more
This is
real.
going somewhere.
Dude, I wish I had music on. I forgot to put my
How does she look, though? I didn't even look.
AirPods in.
I'm sure she's good. If you stood it up,
on.
Set
golden.
her up.
Anything with the base or the bottom? Feel cracked or anything?
she's solid.
Yeah, we're pretty good.
Oh my gosh.
Successful ravine pass. All right, Colby, make the jump.
I'm about to break my leg on the jump. You got it?
Bro, it's gonna be like last night. We're like, we did it, and then there's a mountain lion.
Oh my gosh, yeah, literally.
Nice.
There we go. Hey, there's a Siggy.
So simultaneously, when we rescued Colby, apparently 20 other pilots had gone down in various parts of the desert. They all got rescued, and then we finally made it back to see our boy Josh and give him a hug.
Okay.
Damn.
Fuck.
I think Josh is a legend.
Dude, yeah.
I saw it. After this, he definitely will be.
And his reserve went in the barbed wire fence. We had to pick it out of there.
We gotta go find
He
this man and
choked
give him
Yeah,
a
we're
big
gonna go
hug.
find- I'm gonna give him a
He
kiss
went
on the
for
mouth.
And it was like
know, he was
boom. It was like boom reserve, you know.
Yeah, he said he was ready for it. He's like, I just knew.
it?
Yeah, barely. Oh my gosh.
So first and foremost, I'm so extremely grateful that Josh was not injured in this reserve toss, and also no other pilots were injured in this whole event. Now, apparently no one got video of the actual collapse happening, but the way Josh described it, basically we were flying back to the LZ, getting our asses kicked with turbulence, and he just got rocked with a major hit of turbulence, which caused a very significant collapse. And almost immediately he said that the lines had gone slack and got sucked into the propeller, and he went into line twist. Right from the get-go, it's a non-recoverable scenario. Line twist is one thing, but the line sucked into the prop basically turns your glider into a streamer, and that's a really bad scenario because you're coming down pretty quickly, and we weren't that high at that moment that happened. So he knew pretty much straight away, I need to toss my reserve. He got it out clean, and Josh described that we were so low at this point that he thought he was gonna die, or at very least be seriously injured. And it wasn't until really low, like 50 feet off the ground, that the reserve was fully inflated, he was stable, and he realized he was coming down slowly and that he was gonna live. It's insane how close this situation was to being really, really bad. I give Josh huge props for reacting the way he did in this scenario, keeping it cool, getting his reserve out, and literally saving his life. I hope there's some things that can be learned from this. One, obviously carry a reserve because there's unexpected scenarios. Two, the weather. Obviously there were warning signs, but like I said, it was contradictory. Everything felt fine. Despite the warning signs, everyone decided to keep flying. And third, I guess when scenarios like this happen and the weather conditions change, play the conservative route. There's no shame in landing out like Colby did. Just get on the ground, get somewhere safe. In my scenario, at very least, I wish I had stayed higher towards the end of that stretch as I got close to the LZ, but it was honestly really difficult because I was hitting that downdraft that was just pushing me closer and closer to the ground and putting me in a bad scenario, like Josh was, to throw your reserve at a low altitude. Anyways, I hope some of you guys found this video helpful, if not at very least entertaining. Stay tuned to the next episode. I got some cool base jumping content, and coming up very, very soon, we're gonna be starting a new giveaway, dropping new designs at Risky Biscuits Co., and it's gonna be the 4-stroke engine for the next giveaway, which I'm very excited about. Should be good content, and someone's gonna get a sweet new paramotor. Till the next one, have fun, fly safe, peace. Bzz.